Good morning. I have a confession to make. I'm inspired to do this because International Women's Day is on my birthday. And I feel like, yay! What better reason to celebrate? So I volunteered myself and my group, who gratefully agreed to help. I volunteered us to do this service 2 months ago. Maybe it was 3. And then I spent the 3 months worrying about what I was going to say. I think this is partly a result of the contentious environment that we all find ourselves in these days. I mean, when I look around, I see people that I can easily sit down and have a conversation with and not worry about it. So I just wanted to start out by saying these are my opinions. I'm not saying that I'm an expert, but I have made some observations and I have some experience on account of I'm a girl. The first time I attended GA was in 2013. It was in Louisville, Kentucky, which was drivable from where I was living in Memphis, and 21 people from my congregation went. I mean, it was just fabulous. We kept meeting up and talking about our experiences at lunches and breakfasts and dinners. I loved being in a room with thousands of UUs. I mean, so often we look around and we say, gosh, I wish there were more of us. And when you go to GA, you get to feel that more of us in a big way. But one thing I wasn't prepared for was how traditional the leadership of my progressive faith felt. Granted, the 2 congregations that I had belonged to up until then were mostly humanists in their leanings, with a sprinkling of pagans and a bunch of feminists thrown in for good measure. But coming to the UUA event, I wasn't ready for the onslaught of he and him and Lord that I kept hearing. I had thought of UUism as pretty progressive. My first UU minister was agnostic, for Pete's sake. When I found that out, it blew my socks off, but it also convinced me that I was in the right place. I had attended several UU women's retreats at the mountain that had many pagans and several witches in attendance. Now, I'm not a pagan or a witch. I think most of my friends would agree. But recognizing the feminine divine called to me in a way that the traditional patriarchal Protestant religion and Catholicism had not. At GA, I felt like I had slipped back in time. I actually wrote a poem which I read at the open mic hour there, and I'm going to read it for you now. It was called, "Where is the Goddess?" Among all these lords and he's and hims, where is she? Can it have escaped your attention that without the she, he would have perished by now? Can it have escaped your consideration that she might have been here first? Oh, I know, chicken and egg. Maybe we'll never know who came first, but can't we at least stop giving him top billing and stop burying her in the footnotes? Well, apparently many felt as I did, because there was a huge turnaround in the UUA a few years later that led to a 2-year study commission, a newly proposed 8th principal, and our first ever woman president of the UUA. As a female, it was easy for me to identify with the groups who had felt underrepresented. I remember what it was like when we needed a man to co-sign our loans, when a woman's property belonged to her husband, when a woman was consistently paid less for the same work as a man. Oh, wait, that's still the case. I know we have made great progress in 50 years, but there is a significant faction of the American public that seems to long for the good old days. The days when a woman knew her place. Just look at what is happening to our reproductive rights. And I've been thinking about what the holdup is to the continuing progress. It seems to me that there are three major stumbling blocks. And there may be more, but the three I'm going to talk about today are Judeo-Christian creation mythology, European languages, and the ranking of survival abilities. Judeo-Christian mythology. Well, first, as I mentioned earlier, there's the myth that man was created first, and woman was an afterthought. Created from, I might add, an expendable body part, not even some vital organ or limb. She should have at least cost him an arm and a leg. Having been made first, it's natural that Adam would have expected to have certain rights and advantages. Think about twins who, having been born only minutes apart, fight all their lives about who is more important, depending on their birth order. And there's the myth that Eve was responsible for the fall from grace. What was she after? Really after? Not the apple. She was after knowledge and education. For this, the couple lost their home, and she was condemned to bear the pain of childbirth throughout all the ages. With myths like these, it's no wonder that men have been suspicious of women learning too much. In a patriarchal culture, these myths provide a reason to keep females from expecting and getting ahead, and a reason for men to think that women are dangerous and need to be controlled for their own good. The Bible also is an issue because there are those that hold on to it as a major teaching text, and it is coming from the point of view of an ancient and patriarchal culture which few enthusiasts are willing to admit is no longer relevant to our times. Then there are those who claim it is the literal word of God and therefore irrefutable and uneditable, even though it has been, in fact, edited many times over the centuries. Progress has no place in it, in an irrefutable mythology. Women's first and foremost goal is still to be fruitful and multiply, to make baby humans. The reason that European languages are relevant is that they assign gender to everything. Every noun is either male or female, and in doing so, they link the idea of being female or male to everything. Whichever gender is chosen gets an immediate advantage as being more godlike, and that hierarchy applies to the mortals doing the worshiping. And besides, the Bible says man was made in God's image. It should come as no surprise to anyone here that God is always portrayed as male. Perhaps the current cultural change of thinking on gender as a continuum instead of binary will eventually be applied to our thoughts about God, but I expect it will take some time, just hopefully not another 2,000 years. The third issue is the ranking of abilities. The common thought is that the abilities generally assigned to males are inherently better than those that are thought of as feminine, especially physical strength and assertiveness, which rank at the top of valuable skills. Muscles. I mean, these days, even women are trying to get muscles. The problem was the test subjects in the, oh, wait a minute, missed a sentence. Years ago, there were psychological studies about the response to danger. And the results were that there was either an impulse to stand and fight or flee. So it was called fight or flight reaction. The problem was the test subjects were all male. When women were added to the mix, the researchers discovered the women chose the third option. They banded together to face the threat as a group. The new alternative was labeled tend and befriend. It's a fallacy to think that survival is best accomplished in this day and age by some club-swinging caveman. The world we live in requires more finesse. Bullies and dictators always fall. The most important skill these days is communication. In my opinion, we will need to change our stories and our language in order to truly change our thoughts and our behavior. It has been more than 2,000 years that women have been trapped in the Little Women mythology. What we need in our modern world is more tend and befriend approach, an awareness that our best hope is to band together to solve our problems and save our global community. I'm looking forward to the day when calling a boys' sports team ladies isn't cause for humiliation. A time when we can stop judging people by their gender stereotypes and see individuals with their unique set of strengths and skills. And the acknowledgement that we are all in this together. Thank you. Margie was not able to be here, but we do have her comments on tape, and we will end with those.
My husband Mike and I first walked into a Unitarian Universalist congregation in 1987. The minister was a man, the board president was a man, and one of the most beloved traditions at that congregation was the men's retreat. But change was happening. Just a few months earlier, the then president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Reverend Bill Schultz, had delivered an address titled, "How Feminist Values May Save the World." Reverend Schultz described patriarchy as almost invariably depicting the world as a place in which one entity controls or dominates. At the heart of a feminist recreation of the world, Schultz said, is the replacement of domination with interdependence. Patriarchy conspires to keep us all in fear of one another. Feminism rejects fear and recognizes mutuality, communion, balance, love, and trust. Our call as Unitarian Universalists, Schultz said, is to embrace those values. 46 years later, those values are alive in our faith, in large part because of several women I'd like to highlight today. I met Alandria Williams in Boston in 2017 at a meeting of the UUA's Regional Leaders Group. I was there representing the Southern region, along with 11 other all-white and nearly all older people. Alandria was younger by 2 decades than everyone else there. She was co-moderator of the UUA and told the regional leaders that her goal was to have a faith that feels vibrant, participatory. Regional leaders were essential to that, she said, but they should be younger and browner. She asked the leaders group, "How would your discussions be different if there were more people who looked like me at the table?" After the formal meeting, there was an informal gathering of many of the regional leaders at the hotel where we were staying. The talk turned to wine, travel, expensive cars. I thought about what Alandria said, and then I asked, how would this discussion be different if there were younger and browner people at this table? As I recall, the conversation then turned more to matters of equity and of faith, the heart of community, the footings for interdependence. Alandria died way too young in September 2020 at just 41 years old. She left a legacy of love and its many ways of reaching out and of drawing people in. Only a few months later, the UUA lost another powerful woman leader, Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson. Hope was dedicated to advancing Black, Indigenous, and people of color. One of her most cherished dreams was lifting up lay leaders and developing authentic shared ministries. a realization that we are interdependent in our congregations. Now, I never met Hope, but I am a member of a team that is living her dream, the UUA's Hope for Us Conflict Engagement Team. The team offers partnerships to congregations that are grappling with tough issues, with an eye to encouraging and channeling productive conflict through the lens of faith formation. That goal also is one of our developmental goals here at UUC, strengthening our ability to have healthy disagreements that deepen relationships. Connie Goodbread, who is co-director of the Hope for Us team, wrote this when Hope passed in late 2020. There are people who speak the truth, who have a deeper understanding, who lean in, who are steadfast, grace-filled, and wise. There are these beautiful souls who bless the world. Hope was one of those people. 40 years after Bill Schultz first spoke about feminist values, the first woman was elected president of the UUA. Throughout her ministerial career, Reverend Susan Frederick Ray has demonstrated in words and in deeds the importance of interdependence, our connections to each other. She was the lead minister at the UU Congregation of Phoenix in 2012 when she organized the Arizona Immigration Ministry and hosted the UUA's Justice GA. She has represented the UUA in the Charlottesville protests against white nationalist violence, worked in conjunction with the Poor People's Campaign on issues of poverty, and just this past summer, she led a rally in Portland, Oregon in favor of reproductive rights after the Supreme Court threw out Roe versus Wade. A highlight for me was Susan's visit to UUC in 2018 to join our congregation, along with other local advocates, to expand voting rights in Florida. This is no time for a casual faith, she said here, repeating a theme of her ministry. Under Reverend Susan's leadership, I believe Unitarian Universalism has made big strides towards Bill Schultz's vision, interdependent, grounded in love and trust. This June, delegates to the UUA's General Assembly will elect a new president. The nominated candidate is Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt. Sophia writes this on her candidate page. Beloveds, we are called to communal care like never before, to serve one another, to organize for justice, to widen the circle of concern, to collectively imagine new ways forward in community and to grow spiritually together. I think Bill Schultz would be pleased.